Welcome to the Evolution of Music and the Consumer panel. I'm humbled to be here with this incredible group of panelists. You'd be hard-pressed to find a group more knowledgeable about the music business. My name is John Amato. I'll be your moderator today. I'm the president of Billboard and The Hollywood Reporter. Just to give you some context on the panelists, I think you all have their resumes, so we don't need to go over that. But Irving Azoff, amongst other things, has been referred to as the fifth eagle. He's the CEO of Azoff MSG Entertainment. He was the CEO of Ticketmaster, the executive chairman of Live Nation, and has managed some of the most prolific careers in music. Next to him is Scooter Braun. Scooter has admitted to driving a purple Mercedes-Benz. He's also
a long time ago.
It was, but you admitted to it, so we can bring that up in public.
Thanks.
He's also discovered the largest pop star of our generation. He's a film producer. He has 3.6 million Twitter followers, which is 15 times the aggregate of the rest of the group. Next to him is Mr. Lucian Grange. Lucian sells approximately, or his company sells approximately 40% of the music in the U.S., which is 10 percentage points better than his next competitor.
At least.
At least. Next to him is Mr. Rob Light. Rob presides over the largest music talent agency in the world. And next to him is Mr. Bob Pittman. Mr. Pittman's company reaches 245 million Americans per month. And at the end is Pasquale Rotella. Pasquale is the founder of Insomniac and operates the largest North American music festival. So, pretty exciting group here today. I think we wanted to start with just running down. Each person up here has a specificity within the music industry, and we thought that we'd give everybody a chance to speak a bit on that before we address some of the themes in our panel. So I guess we'll start with you, Irving.
These are really great times in the music business. I think, especially as I think music has everybody bemoaned the downturn. You know, when Napster and everything hit music for free. But I think over this past generation, what it's done, you know, it has made the consumer, kids especially, much more aware of music. You know, all the streaming services coming alive and everything, even on careers for some of my older clients like the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac, finding that their music is reaching more people, selling more tickets. And I think just across the board, you know, it's breaking more artists. Music as a form is more important than it ever was. It's obviously a time of change. Opportunities are endless. And just generally, you know, the message that I have, you know, especially to brands out there is that, you know, the industry isn't attracting as much as it deserves for the impact, social impact it has. Exciting times with you know, the festival scene has exploded. You know, we recently refurbished the old Forum here in Los Angeles, and it's a kind of a music-only venue, which is a new kind of form we think is going to work in several cities across America. But we've also funded in Las Vegas the Brooklyn Bowl, which is a multi-use venue that has bowling and music. We're going to expand with some comedy clubs that are also rock music clubs. And especially on the live side, it's a really exploding time, and we think it's going to continue. Acts of all genre and all age are doing really, really, really well. And media attention, you know, to entertainers of all kinds is increased. So, you know, we're just I think all of us up here are very bullish about the business. We're all kind of in little bits of different areas, but I think business is great for everybody, and that makes it a lot of fun.
Great.
So for me, I look at this panel and think, what the hell am I doing up here? So I'm the baby of the group, and my generation, a lot of my friends have, well, some of them are here, have gone into finance, some of them have gone into tech, and I think I'm having the most fun. The music business hasn't changed, where I like to say I get paid for the bullshit, do everything else for free. we get to break artists, we get to go around the world and build great brands, and I'm finding myself getting into so many different businesses as an entrepreneur because that's what music does. You know, if you look at 8 of the top 10 people in social media on the planet, they're musicians. Actors, you don't really know who they are, but you feel like musicians, you know who they are every single day. They are part of your life. And brands like that are extremely influential. So I think what you're going to learn as we go across this panel and talk today is that when you talk about the music business, you're making the wrong assumption. We're a branding and multimedia business. It's completely changed. We're no longer in a space of, it definitely starts with the song, but it no longer ends with the song. And that's why I think we're having the most fun. It's, you know, a guy like Irving, I've watched his career, and Lucien as well. And when Lucien and I first met, he said to me, look, I can inherit the current business or I can build a new one. And that's why I was excited. And I think we've kind of done that. Everyone here no longer is just in the music business. And now I'll stop talking, let them continue.
I think there are 2 very good summaries. The transition that the industry is going through at the moment and around the portfolio of businesses that we're involved in, which is recorded music, music publishing, music merchandising, is seeing an incredible transition at different speeds in different genres and in different markets. The opportunity that technology and devices and content and IP gives us is of enormous new scale. The ability to monetize in the short term, create long-term recurring revenues for the future, and do things and deliver content and IP into countries and markets and to consumers in ways which has never been done before. I think that you will pick up on probably quite a strong degree of optimism that we all have to our work and to the entire industry. The pace of transition is quicker than we would have all predicted. There are some things which are going down more slowly. There are things that are going plateauing faster than we'd anticipated, and there are things which are going up in terms of this broad portfolio and this diversified series of revenue streams, where as you look at the data, it's actually very compelling. At the heart of it is obviously our relationship as content creators and content owners. I mean, the work which we do in the company has taken probably 80 or 90 years to actually construct. So the opportunities that gives, where you marry the new with the established, with the re-emerging, is actually very exciting.
From the live side, live has never been healthier. The touring industry is growing at an exponential rate. And interestingly, it's the one area that's only benefited from social media. It's not disruptive, it's actually been enhancing it. And you're seeing touring grow on every level, both with new artists and young bands, but all the established and heritage artists continue to do better and better. The communal experience of people getting together and sharing both lifestyle and passions will never go away no matter what technology does. Add to that the festival market has taken off exponentially around the world, and not just in the genre of EDM, but every sort of festival. When you think about music as it relates to live, expand your base and your thinking a little bit. It includes comedy, it includes family shows, it includes food and wine festivals, and everything that involves live and being communal has grown. Add to that the international markets, which didn't always excel, have grown exponentially. When you look at Southeast Asia, the Pacific Rim, the Middle East, India, South America, never been healthier. And then add on top of that VIP experiences and the amount of money that's generating. It is the most direct connection from the fan to the artist. And I've never been more bullish on where I think it's going to go. One of the great things that's happened, which you've seen in live, and with no disrespect to all my peers up here, is that the biggest genre in live right now, being EDM or dance music, broke really without radio or record companies. It was a communal movement of fans that drove that. Now everybody has picked up on it, but that happened purely through technology and the artist-to-fan relationship. So.
Well, as I look at it, and I've sort of hit it in my career from all angles, I think this is an exciting time. I think it's exciting because it's a time of change. I've been in so many businesses, I'm sort of forced to go back and look at the consumer. And if you look at the consumer here, the consumer has never enjoyed music more than they do now. The base of people who are interested in music has never been broader or bigger. And so as opposed to thinking this is something bad, I think it's something very good. Now, the entire industry is trying to reform around what's the business model, how do you take advantage of it with all the technology choices people have. But to me, that stuff works itself out, and fundamentally, I think you're watching the trend. There's also this huge trend called the connected consumer as opposed to the connected home. And that it's one of the reasons I came out of retirement and came back to this company, because as I look at radio, and I started many, many years in radio, but have spent most of my time in digital and TV, that when you look at this consumer that is no longer tethered to the home, radio suddenly becomes even more important as this sort of connected companion. You know, in my days in TV, we always talked about TV as America's hobby. We called radio America's companion. And we're the folks who tell people what's going on and connect the fans, the consumer, with whatever they're interested in. For probably 75% of our radio stations, that means music. And they're not only interested in the hearing the music, they're interested in knowing everything about it. You know, they go listen to it on the music collection, but radio's the place where they find out everything about it and make decisions about which concerts to go to, which TV shows to watch that have music, which music to buy or put in their playlist or exchange. So like these folks, I think has never been a more exciting time. And I think for us, one of the challenges as a company was to stop thinking radio is a tower and a transmitter, and to think that it's really a franchise and a relationship that we have with the consumer, and we need to be on every device talking to them in every way we can. You'll notice a lot of our morning personalities now start their conversations on social, and then bring it on the air, amplify it with social, and we'll continue the conversation afterwards. In my day, the consumer desperately wanted to be social, and they called the request line and said, would you play a song? Would you dedicate something? Put me on the air. And it was very good for a 15-year-old kid because you got to meet a lot of girls. But it was also, I think, evidence of what's going on. Obviously, the technology we have today has enabled that to a degree I think none of us imagined even 10 years ago. So, and again, I think in our relationship with music, we see our job as connecting the fans to their favorite music. And so I think we are, when I got to the company, I think someone described that the music business and radio were somewhat indifferent. And I put a charge on our folks saying, look, our #1 strategic relationship is the music business. We need to help the music business because a healthy music business is good for us and essential to us. And we've, I think, changed the dialogue there and continue to think everybody on this panel is our partner. And we have a deep interest in their success and listening to their goals because that's the only way we'll deliver ours.
Good afternoon. First, I have to say it's a huge honor to be on a panel with all these guys. I've looked up to so many of these guys and what they've done with their careers. And it's great to hear how many people feel on the panel that EDM is a big part of music right now. It's, you know, I started out of passion. Someone mentioned that it was this culture that kind of bubbled up. And you know, my first event had 400 people, and now my largest event has 400,000 people. So it's been a crazy ride, and you know, the amount of artists that are coming out of dance music, it's amazing. You know, I was just meeting with someone the other day, an artist that I'm talking about doing some business with, and he's like, yeah, I was into hardcore metal, but you know, I don't know how to play guitar, and I wanted to be on that stage so badly. So it's so accessible for people to be able to, and now he's DJing, now he's producing, and he's making music on you know, on computers. And there's a lot of young people coming out of this culture, blowing up overnight. You know, they go from virtually being nobody to getting $50,000 gigs on, you know, every weekend, every Friday, Saturday. It's pretty amazing what's happening in dance music. You know, it took 20 years for it to get, I don't know any other genre of music that took this long to blow up, but now that it's on the radar, you know, there's collaborations with hip hop artists and pop artists, and it's just amazing where it's gone. And time's flown. I mean, Scooter, you said that you're the youngest guy, you're the baby of the group. I used to be the baby of the group. I don't know what happened overnight, but like, you know, it's.
I have bad news for you.
So, you know, it's just incredible where dance music has gone, and live events. I mean, there were no festivals when I started, and now there's major festivals popping up in every market, and it is fueling new artists. It is fueling new genres, new subgenres of dance music on a continuous basis, and it's very exciting. And then the content side of things. I mean, you know, we have a media company that we just started within the past year within our company, and that's a whole nother business, and it is very much part of music, the music business, and you know, the overall experience. It's not just about the music, it's about everything around it as well. The whole experience, the content, you know, it's exciting. It couldn't be more exciting.
Great. So Pasquale, you'd mentioned, I noticed that you did an event in EDC in Mexico City. Rob, you had just spoken about how touring's becoming more global. Lucian, how do you see music becoming more global? Is your business becoming more global, or has it always been global and we're just talking about it more now?
I think it's always been global. We have an opportunity to talk about it as a result of the technology and the ability to distribute. We operate in approximately 70 countries. We're making music in probably 70 languages. We are investing as a company enormous amounts of money in creating local content, local audio-visual content. What we're seeing is what is driving the new models, what is driving subscription, the new access model, local downloads, and maintaining in some markets, for example, Germany and Japan, the physical CD business is local culture, local language, local artists, local composers telling national stories. And then when you have a balance between a great international repertoire, which we refer to as the English speaking, so the bulk of it comes from America. Australia has an occasional say. New Zealand, we have an artist called Lord, who's been phenomenally successful this last year, and of course the United States and the UK. So you put that together in terms of our recorded music business, and it's accelerating opportunities, digital. Our relationships with telcos and ISPs are entirely different to what they are with streaming and subscription services. Our relationship with YouTube around ad-funded creation and the income that we derive from that in continental Europe is utterly, totally different from the paid premium subscription model, for example, in Sweden. So we're seeing a patchwork quilt of different technologies, different products. I mean, if we have an act in Japan that may sell 2 million equivalent of an album, it's not going to carry or be marketable anywhere outside of Japan. So the investment and the ability to create local artists, bolt them onto a general huge scaled offer of international artists, as well as a catalogue that's taken 70 or 80 years to create, means that the dialogue that we can have with consumers, with fans, with platforms, distributors, tech companies, the things that we're doing with telcos in Latin America and for example, where we're building in bundles into the transaction of a new phone. It's a petri dish of ideas and opportunities. It is not without enormous challenges. Just listening to all of us speak, I hesitate for a second. You know, when you run a business and when you're running a global business, let's not underestimate there are things happening in different ways and at different speeds all over the market. We had a very tough year in Japan last year as an industry in terms of content, and that is improving. But there were other parts of the world that grew for the first time in a decade. So we're getting contradictory information, but at the same time, with all the challenges and all the opportunities for scalability and this global approach around copyright, around IP, around media, very exciting.
So Irving, as the music business is becoming more global, for your artists on the touring side, is it a harder job for them?
No, it's actually becoming easier. You know, some of my older artists, you know, both the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac, are able to play just about anywhere they want, and you know, especially, you know, for some reason, the UK, Ireland, Canada, Australia, the other English-speaking countries, actually, I think, have a greater interest in live music even than the United States. So you'll sell more tickets per cap there than anywhere here. But you know, the Eagles are about to go. We're doing, you know, I think it's 19 shows in UK and Ireland alone.
Wow.
So that's very internationalized. In the old days, if you would sit down and you would say, you know, we're going to do a 60-city tour, 45 of those would be in the United States. You know, if you want to pick your 60 best dates now, I would say roughly 60% of those will be outside the United States.
Wow. Bob, when we were on the call leading into this panel, you'd mentioned that the music business is becoming a media content business. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think the music business has always been, I think, content for everybody to use in different ways. I think the wonderful thing about music is that it is so diverse. You know, I'm being an old research guy, everything is sort of a psychographic group. In radio, if we can find a group of people that hang together, we're going to find their music taste is the same. Their political views are similar. Their fashion tastes are very similar. And we put a radio station in the middle of it, and it's the beacon of the tribe, and call it a format. But I think music does that. If you look at advertisers today, they find the same thing. If they've got a pickup truck, there's going to be some artist, some music that is just right for that group of people. If you're talking about even packaged goods, there's some music that fits there. And now you go to TV and look, some of the highest rated shows on television today are music. That I think, you know, as Lucian talks about how the music business is changing, you know, I think the industry is no longer limited to you know, selling records, if you will, but really is thinking about, okay, how does music fit everything? And I think that's probably the most exciting thing about the music business today is it's always been that popular. It's always had that characteristic. I think we just never had sort of the business model to make it happen. And also for people in other industries that can use music to figure out they should use music.
So, Scooter, I read a comment on in Esquire the other day that said, "We're allowing social media to change what it means to be a fan." It's said by Andy Langer. What does that mean?
I actually disagree.
Yeah.
Because I think the only thing that's changed is self-discovery, and that feeling that you get when you find that musician or that record where you feel like it's yours. So for me, I grew up playing basketball, and I remember being at a camp called Eastern Invitational, and I had a roommate who had a mixtape, and he goes, "This is Notorious B.I.G." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And he gave me that mixtape, and I went home, and I was the coolest kid in the suburbs, because 6 months later, when Biggie came to the suburbs, I felt ownership over that. And that's what social media is. So a lot of times, the music business is fun for me because there are no rules. You know, I'm hearing a lot of different comments about, you know, EDM. For example, I have an artist named Martin Garrix that we manage, and here's a kid who last year was at one of these festivals watching, and now he's going to be headlining. And he has the biggest instrumental record at radio in 20 years, yet I'm getting pressure to give another radio record, and for EDM, I don't want to. I actually want to keep it away from radio for a while. I want to keep it just to those fans, and I don't want him doing a record with what we call top line, where you actually hear lyrics, because the self-discovery of those fans, you don't want to take it away from them too soon. Then you have other artists where the self-discovery might be a YouTube video, or it might be, you know, a Vine where they saw them sing, and it's the same feeling that, you know, people got when they found that vinyl in a record store and they got that same kind of moment, or they got that mixtape like I got. And that's what's so important, because sometimes there's artists where the record just goes and you discover them on the radio, and that's not necessarily the best thing for these kids. They don't want to hear it on the radio first. They want to hear it somewhere else. So that, you know, you still need radio and television. Everything Bob does, I need, but it's more for validation, not for discovery.
Right.
And I think going back to what you said about it's now becoming kind of a global game, the hardest part about that, it is easier, as Irving said, because acts are breaking around the world like never before. The hard part is that we're still working with human beings who can't be in 32 countries at the same time. So I think before it was, okay, let's break the States, and then we have a year and a half out, and then we start touring around the world and going. The problem is that now you break an act, and they're expected to be in every single one of these countries the next day, where kids are all feeling like when they go home after school, they're going online and they got their friend in Germany and they got their friend in France, and you know, they have this whole group. And an agent like Rob, he and I have problems because we're trying to do the promo, but then also get a tour out in time, and that's the whole issue. So if anyone here can figure out cloning, you'll save the entire management industry.
Frozen soundtrack.
Oh, exactly. The Disney Frozen soundtrack is the best thing in the world. You make a cartoon and they go everywhere. But that being said, I think as far as what you're saying about social media, what it's done is given access like never before. And we talk a lot about impressions and about millions of eyeballs and how do we get those millions of eyeballs, but we forget that when a kid's sitting in front of their phone or their tablet or their computer, that interaction is still a one-on-one, genuine interaction. It is the most intimate moment when you sit there in front of that screen and feel like you've discovered something that no one else has seen. And I've been fortunate enough to do that a couple different times with different genres, and that is the most important interaction. So what social media has done is just taken that feeling you had when you went into that record store and found that vinyl and just put it on your phone.
Mark Geiger recently said that streaming will be a $72 billion a year business in 10 years. So far, is there any indication that that's conceivable?
I'd like to know who he spoke to.
I think Billboard.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's not something anyone can comment on. We don't. I wish we did have a crystal ball.
But I mean, are you seeing any indications? Clearly, I think it's up 51% year over year, the streaming business.
It's probably higher.
Right.
I mean, the indication I think we're seeing is that it's coming, and that I think it's 28 million are paying at this point. So it's just the data and the consumer behavior is incredibly compelling and becoming very, very compelling. With new products, the move to smartphones, the consumer behavior around smartphones, the decline of the PC, is very, very helpful to access to streaming. And we are seeing, it's quite interesting, believe it or not, the decline of the CD is probably more challenged by the distribution than actually the demand. In some markets, we're seeing, again, as I said, completely contradictory evidence. That in the United States, we have, we have about 40% of the market. Around 35% is physical. In Japan, which is the world's second biggest market, it's 80% physical. In Germany, which is the world's third biggest market, it's approximately 65 to 70%. So what declines and at what speed? What is plateauing? We're seeing some plateauing effects around downloads and around digital delivery, purely on downloads. But the reality is that in terms, if you look at apps, if you look at online games, if you look at the huge array of TV and film that is you're available to actually buy online now compared to where we were 2 or 3 years ago. There's a huge amount of content which is available. And then now we've got streaming. Now there's two parts of streaming. There's ad-funded streaming, and then there's subscription. The premium subscription model, something which we are, as
every month goes by, we're looking at different consumer trends in different markets. In Sweden, for example, it's 90% of the entire industry, where you have, I think, about 65% of the addressable market, 70% of the addressable market consumers who are paying premium subscription. Now, for all my predecessors who've been in this industry for 50, 60 years, because the reality, recorded music and this part of the IP chain is a mature industry. I don't think any of my predecessors running a global company have ever had a monthly call with the head of their Swedish company, ever. Because it was a distribution wholesaling operation. Now he's showing us, and we're talking to him about what we can learn about what is going on in those Northern European markets, about consumer behavior, about how they manage from an account point of view, et cetera, et cetera. So we are seeing growth. We're very optimistic about it. Technology, products, competition online, new streaming platforms, Beats, Spotify, Deezer. We're about to launch with in partnership with YouTube a premium subscription service. Bring it on. The more that there is, the more markets, the more regions, more product.
You know, if I can jump in, I just think as you look at this, you're asking about looking in the future, the one thing we know, and we've seen it for all of mankind, is consumers go to convenience. You know, the microwave oven didn't cook better than the conventional oven, but it's a hell of a lot easier to use. My mobile phone drops my call twice by the time I get home. I often can't tell it's my wife on the other end of the phone, and 40% of U.S. households have dropped their wired line. And I think as you get into the music business, and the implications here is that it is the most convenient way to consume. And at the end of the day, and you know, look at my days at AOL, in the 90s when this business was just getting started, you'd have engineers come in and say, I made something better. And the question always is it easier? And they go, well, it's better. It's one more click. One more click will not work. One less click will be a big deal. And I think so when you're talking about, and you're listening to what Lucian's talking about in terms of where they're going with the business, it's being driven by a real fundamental consumer desire. And finally, technology is able to deliver it, because consumers always wanted this. They want instant everything and immediate and right here. It's, I spent most of my career looking at the connected home. It was behind the Time and Warner merger. It was behind the AOL Time Warner merger, two I lived through. And I think we were all surprised by the speed at which the consumer wanted to be connected, but they did not want to be tethered to the home. Americans spend 31% more time today in the car than they did 10 years ago. The trend's reversed.
And as rights owners, we have to be fearless in making that happen. There's a variety of people involved in the marriage. There's the artists, there's the technology companies, the Samsungs and the Apples, the Android, Google. There's the distributors, certainly in the context of the streaming platforms, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to be fearless with one another in terms of how we actually create more opportunity for everybody because of the consumer. And that's one of the key seismic shifts that we've had in all our businesses. And it's exciting.
But it also creates more opportunity for more people to enter the business, because the distribution window to go through those streaming services means anybody can make a record. The real Herculean task now is how are you going to market those artists so people want to pay attention when it's streaming? Because there'll be countless, unlimited amount of music, but how are you going to push so that your particular artist stands out? And for that artist to stand out so that people want to hear it, whether to go see it live, to buy it, or just to stream it, is going to be sort of the holy grail. It's where Scooter does what he does well, Irving does what he does well, is to bring awareness to those artists. Yeah,
but there's a mix of the old and the new. There's something.
But the old is going to be old very quickly. What's happening in Sweden, to me, is where the curve is going to go. It may take Japan 10, 15, 20 years to get there, but inevitably, we're going to get there. The next generation of children is just going to be totally differently wired to music than what we're at now. So we're going to get there. And then how do you market? How do you go and promote if radio's not as relevant because they're streaming? So
wait a minute. What did you say?
Irving, I think the narrative right now is that the artist is more powerful than ever. Is the artist making more money now relative to this than ever before?
Well, I think the mix of an artist income has changed, but I wouldn't say they're making the big get bigger, but there's also a lot more money for sooner for artists as they break. I serve on the Clear Channel radio board, and since Bob came in and brought his team and put it together, when you look at a streaming service, that isn't really how we help market our artists and make them more money. Clear Channel in particular, and it's forced some of the other radio chains to follow, have become really good partners in the artist development process. Bob, and through iHeartRadio and the festivals and everything that they've created, Bob realizes, I think one of the comments here was about, radio doesn't break things, but Clear Channel really understands it's more than just radio. I mean, Bob can comment better, but one thing that's kind of a common theme now is throughout the music business, people are it's a time when all the different sectors are very much more cooperative. It's a business where people have found there's not an imbalance of where it's the labels versus the artists and managers anymore. Everybody's really working hand in hand, and I think everybody's making more money. Everyone says the recorded music business is tough. I'm very hopeful that, as this, not only advertising, streaming, but subscription comes along, that'll get even more healthier. But what's really going on, and from my Live Nation days, there were statistics around that, I had Ad Age. I went to speak at an Ad Age conference, and they. And I did, they said, "What do you want to talk about?" And I said, "Well, can you do some research for me?" And they basically did some research and showed me that brands were spending 14 times as much money on sports marketing as they do music marketing. Okay, and we're now seeing a reversal where those marketing dollars from outside our traditional things that those of us up here can spend are now flooding to the music market. So it's only going to get bigger, and with that, I think everybody's going to make more money. And it's a business that shares. There isn't through the old days there was a lot of push pull between labels and artists. Everybody's more cooperative these days, and it's really good times. But artists are newer starting out artists. The old days you'd have a couple of hit records and you'd go sell out 4 days at the Forum. Now you have a couple of hit records and you can make 10 grand a night opening for somebody on a tour. So
unless you're an electronic music DJ, then you make 50,000 a night.
But just one thing, whether the artists are making more or less, they're making success gets you a lot of money. But I think Irving and Scooter would both agree that the majority of the income for artists now is coming from the live marketplace. And whether that inevitably drives sponsorship and endorsement, but the ability to play live around the world is the biggest income source for most artists today.
And how do the artists feel about that? Oh, I'm sorry.
In dance music, I don't know what the splits were when there was a band of 4, but you'll have one DJ who travels, with one tour manager, maybe some friends, but he's getting all that money. There is no one to split that money with, and he doesn't have any gear. He shows up with a
computer.
Yeah, with a computer, and some of these guys are getting paid as much as $1 million for one gig, and they don't need to split that with anyone except for the agent and the manager. So they're making a lot of money. I haven't booked bands or too many hip hop acts. And when it was more on an underground level. But the events that we do, they're killing it. I mean, these guys are making more money than I ever thought, and they ever thought. I mean, it's pretty crazy where it's gone.
So how do you keep ticket prices down?
Sorry?
How do you keep ticket prices down? Where if you have 400,000 people coming to your event, that's a difficult dance.
Well, we're doing a lot of people at some of those shows, so it's a struggle sometimes. I mean, there was an event recently that I think didn't sell out because the ticket prices were too high. a really well-known event. It's called Ultra Music Fest, and it happens in Miami. And you know, the tickets were too high, so you have to find that sweet spot. You know, but about the artists being more powerful than ever in dance music, it's not just the artist, not for our events anyways. It's actually the whole package. You know, 20% marketing, 20% venue, 20% lineup. I have right now, my company has 400,000 tickets sold, and the event's in June, and we haven't announced the lineup yet. So, you know, I mean, it's important people expect and they're part of it, but it's not the only reason why you go. There's a whole lot going on, you know, and I would say it's hard for bands to compete, you know. At Coachella, it's like you walk into the dance tent and there's all this energy and there's all this, like, there's lighting and special effects and lasers and, you know, everything's queued up with the special effects. Every beat is like, you know, linked up. It's all in sync, and then, you know, you walk over to the you know, the live stage, and it's, you know, it doesn't have that same. I mean, it's awesome still, but you know, it doesn't feel as alive. Except if you're watching certain. I mean, if you're a real big fan, but if you're getting introduced and you're a young person, that's what really, like, you know, grabs me. You know, and I'm not even I'm a lot older than a lot of our fans. But the attention span, I mean, you stay engaged when you have all this happening. And about being, if someone mentioned, I think, Scooter, you mentioned about how do you have an artist in more than one place at one time? You know, I think the future is creating, you know, with artists, and it would be a collaboration of artists, but like what Daft Punk is and what Gorillaz is. You know, young people today, what I've noticed, our fans that come to our shows anyways, they're not so particular on what's going on. They they want to believe in the magic that's going on up there, because there's been this thing where dance music DJs or producers are up there and they're not making the beats up there, they're just pushing play. And, you know, they are making the beats in their studio, and there's a lot of talent that goes into that, but they are up there to be, you know, there is not a lot to do, but you can find things to do, or you can do nothing. You don't really know, and the fans don't care. They want to be entertained. So, you know, some projects that I've been working on have been where you get, you know, great producers, you get the best special effects guy, you get a guy that can make a Mickey Mouse, Dead Mouse, you know, you create an iconic character. You make sure the music is the best it can be, and the show's as great as it can be, and you know, and you can recreate it. And as long as you're transparent with the fans, you're not creating a boy band. You're actually
creating an experience.
Just like you'd go to a Vegas show, and you know, that's the future for us. We still want to have those individuals up there, like Martin Garrix headlining a show, but you know, we want a time slot for the show that's happening, and I think that's definitely. And you still package it, you can still market it, you can still sign that brand to a label. People still want to talk about something and want something iconic, but at the end of the day, they want to have a good time and they want to hear good music. How it gets to that point, I don't think they care about the details as much.
You know, I think these shows, too, are a lot like radio stations in the sense that it's a franchise. I go to Burning Man every year. No one knows what Burning Man's going to be this year, and you just the tickets are sold out. Everybody's dying for a ticket. By the way, you build your own camp. There's nothing there. And I think if you look at each one of these big EDM festivals, it's the same as a radio station. Why does someone listen to Z100? Why does someone listen to Kiss FM? Why is it #1 year after year after year? Because they're attached to the franchise. By the way, I do want to just say something, because Rob said something about radio is less relevant in the streaming era. I think radio is probably more relevant in the streaming era. You know, and I think we have to be very careful that radio and your music is really the same as it was when there was an AM radio station, 45 RPM records. The form of the radio and the form of my collection has changed dramatically. But my music collection is when I want to listen to my music and I want to escape the world. Radio is the opposite. It's where I want to find out what's going on in the world. One of the most telling statistics is that in this era of streaming services, radio listeners have increased. And if you look at the research, 70% of Americans, when they say, where did you discover the music you buy in your music collection? 70% say FM radio. If you ask Pandora users, 70% FM radio. If you ask Spotify users, 70% FM radio. Our job is to show people what's out there. By the way, we also tell them what movies out this weekend, what TV shows on tonight, what fashions are out, and part of the job. So,
I'm only.
And by the way, you ain't gonna sell your concerts without radio promoting it.
Bob and I are old friends, and his key lieutenant is my college roommate, so I love Clear Channel Radio. But I'm also looking 10 years down the road, and I don't believe that terrestrial radio will be as relevant to a 12-year-old today in 5 or 6 years. And if you're going to look forward, I think they are going to get their information, that exact information, from other places and other sources, and the traditional terrestrial radio station will not be relevant the way it was to our generation or today. Now, musically, there may be other formats.
I'm betting against you, and I will tell you the research says differently. Teenagers today.
So we'll come back in 10 years and do.
Teenagers today listen to radio in the same percentage they did when you and I were teenagers. But, it hadn't changed. Now, what's different is instead of using the request line, they use Twitter, they use Facebook, they use Instagram. When they communicate with each other about things, how we amplify it, we now use that as opposed to going to the press to do it. When we announced the first iHeartRadio Music Festival, we didn't do a press conference. We did a roadblock on 850 radio stations.
Guys, I'm going to interrupt you both real quick to save us. The bottom line is, I know you're the agent for a bunch of my acts. I actually disagree with you, but I kind of agree. So here's why. I think the difference is radio will have the same effect. I think you're wrong in that. I just think what you're pointing out is you guys are speaking two different languages, but you're saying the same thing. It's going to be there. There's going to be validation. I think radio will have a different effect on the 12-year-old than it does to the to the kid today moving forward. But I think the difference is that all of us, what we do, is all going to be necessary. I think that's what Irving was pointing out, that we all have to be collaborative, because at the end of the day, what we're doing, which is so interesting to you guys who aren't in our business, so most of the stuff we're saying is probably boring, but what we do is we create content. And that content is validated in different ways, in different steps. And as the generations move forward, radio will change in how it validates, but it will still be just as important of a validation moving forward. That being said, what's so important to everyone here is the fact that we do create content, and content's value is increasing every single day in a major, major way. And what we also do is influence. So if you, as a businessman, are flying to Japan, you're probably going to have a better meeting if you can speak Japanese. We speak the universal language, which is music. We can get across to a consumer, a brand. We can amplify anything, because what we make travels everywhere faster than anything in the world. And I think how we validate it, whether it be EDM, I think that you are underestimating the fact that, especially EDM consumers, yeah, a lot of people going, 400,000 people, a lot of them are just going to have a good time. I mean, that's really what Woodstock was back in the day. It's just, they're going because they're looking for a place to be 400,000 people and be young and go, woo! That's what they want to do. That's really what it comes down to. That being said, I wouldn't, for the hardcore EDM fan, that base that you need so the 400,000 people show up, those artists matter to them. Those producers matter to them. And I think if you don't give them something that's very real, that they don't show up, and you start to lose your core. And I think that's something as managers we've always known, which is if you don't feed the core, everything else, yeah, and the millions of people that come and make them a superstar, that's great, but you always have to know who your core is. And I think you'll agree with me on that.
You know, I agree, but it's not what rock and hip hop was. Rock and hip hop that was all it was about. Dance music, you need the artists. You need the artists, and it's very important, but it's not unless you're going, we have different kinds of events. There's our concert events, and there we call them talent showcase events, and they'll do, you know, thousands of people. The biggest artists will do thousands of people, but you don't have a bunch of touring dance music acts. it's very limited.
No, I think the brand that you've built is amazing because you give an amazing production. People know the credibility of the brand, the franchise. But I think also the artists being collaborative and always wanting to be at those shows and being there together, people can count on that when they see your brand.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, it's all these different things. It's not any one thing, and it's not just the lineup. But you got to have the lineup. You got to have the right artists there, and we want them there. You know, and we, you know, but it's a different once you get there. You know, there's been this big, with the explosion of dance music, there's been, and people misunderstand what I'm saying about, you know, I've said on other panels that, you know, it's not just about the artists, and they think that I don't care about the artists. I care a lot about the artists. They're very important, but they're as important as a bunch of other things that are happening at the show.
Pasquale, I want to cut you off because we're running short on time. One thing, I just going back to the artist, Irving, Joe Walsh, if he was 25 years old today, would he be the rock star that he was, or would he be a villain in the media?
Oh, I don't know that he'd be a villain in the media.
But you get what I'm saying, right? With a TMZ culture or in social media, you know, could you have that same mystere of, you know, the rock star that you know that was prevalent?
Listen, music is always a rebellious form, and you know whether that happens, you know, with younger artists or with older artists, you know, there's always been a sense of danger and rebellion about music. So you know, I don't think that's changed. It's just, you know, it's just mutated to different times and how these kids grow up.
Bob, you know, we were talking a lot about radio, and you know, you ran MTV very early on in the cable industry. You ran AOL very early on in that industry, you know, and now you're running a business that, you know, is 110 years old. How have you adapted to that?
Well, I don't know, it's adapted. I came out of retirement to come back here. And Irving knows the story as Mark May stepped down as CEO and contacted me and said, would I be interested? And I said, absolutely not. I know what these jobs do to you. I'm having a great time, not working very hard. And Rich Bressler got me, he said, well, would you just look at the company? And I looked at this and went, oh my God. I mean, I'm like Rob, I sort of, you know, read the press and goes, oh, this must be something wrong with radio. And I start looking at these numbers and dig and dig and dig and go, this is a huge platform. Now, the exciting thing, and I think one of the things Lucian was talking about, Scooter's talking about from another generation, is the exciting thing is to build things. And the easiest way to build something is to have a huge platform and a connection and a microphone and a megaphone to the consumer. And so what's been great for me is to take this business that reached virtually everybody in the country, and this company, Clear Channel alone, reaches almost every adult consumer in the country every month. You know, bigger audience in the U.S. than Facebook or Google. So the question is, what can we build with it? And that's been the exciting thing. I mean, iHeartRadio came out of nowhere. It's now the biggest radio digital service. And, you know, by the way, I don't think our radio stations need to be on FM. They can be on the internet as well. And build the custom radio stuff, the Perfect 4 stations, actually taking talk onto it. And the platform's the #2 audio service today. And we view the streaming music collections like Spotify as our friends, not our enemies, that we think we're very synergistic here. And so we've taken it in a whole new direction, but we've de-risked it by already having a business that does $6 billion of revenue and that already has these big consumer franchises in place. A hell of a lot easier to build on that base and morph into something or to build new businesses than it is from scratch. And by the way, you talk about MTV and AOL. I've also got a couple of investments I made along the way that disappeared, that we've forgotten about. The mortality rate of startups is horrific. And it takes a long time, and I'm an old man. So this was the perfect place for me, and I think, again, we've been able to do exciting stuff and hopefully more to come.
Great. All right. Well, we got just a few minutes left. I think, you know, generally the narrative for the last 10 years was that the record business was, or the music business was in a decline. I feel that the narrative now is a breath of fresh air. Things are growing. You know, got about a minute left for each person. Just want to know, so that we can start with Pasquale this time. going down this way. Bullish or bearish on the future? You know, any predictions?
In dance music, it's only getting bigger. You know, it's in the amount of artists and the kind of the music that's coming out of it. It's just getting bigger and bigger, and it's an exciting time. You know, and we're learning more and more every day on the content side on how to capitalize off of that. There's so much. You know, we have such a captive audience. They want more. We can't even keep up with how much they want. It's an exciting time for music, and it's definitely it's still going up. It's huge right now, and it's still going up.
Great. Bob?
I think music's never been bigger, and I think the exciting thing is we're finding folks like Irving and Scooter and Lucian and Rob and Pasquale here doing absolutely new things with it that sort of opens our eyes to what it could be and how we can reach the full potential. And I think that's probably good for the business and good for everybody in it.
I got to see Nikesh Arora, the head of Google, speak a few months ago, and he said the best way to predict the future was to look ahead and say what's not going to be there, because what's not going to be there sort of reveals what will be healthy. And interestingly, in that microcosm, what I know will be there is live music. Whatever form we put music out to the consumer, and I agree with what Bob said earlier, it's never been more prevalent and more important to humans than to consume music. It's at its highest ever and will continue to grow. But I'm incredibly bullish on the live experience and that direct artist to fan relationship. We didn't talk about that a lot today, but that connection point is really going to dictate what we all do as we go forward. So, and I believe it starts with that live connection. So I'm incredibly bullish where we're going.
I think it's important. You know, this industry is incredibly complex, and you know, a different series of skill sets and experiences. Content is content. It's about copyright and intellectual property. Through our acquisition of EMI, for example, our company will own the copyright and the rights to the Beatles, for example, in perpetuity. They're not services, they're not events, they're not cycles, they are permanent forms of revenue, which at this time in this transition of our industry, as it collides with content and technology, allows all of us to do entirely different things in different ways that we would never have imagined. So in that context, on a long-term, music has been around for 1,000 years. Copyright in the context of the recorded music in the music publishing business has been around probably for 80 or 90 years. And that part of the business is going to be around forever. So in that context, I'm excited.
I hate following a British accent. I think the answer is absolutely bullish, because as an entrepreneur, you know, you don't want someone to come and say, look, you're going to have a 100% chance of getting this right. You actually would prefer for someone to say, you have 0.0001% chance of getting this right, and that's the challenge. That's what you kind of feed off of. And when you get to go into an industry where there's constant demand, there's always going to be a demand for music, and that demand creates passion in other people. You know there's a solution, you just need to find it. And there are no rules in this industry. That's what's so fun about it. So I'm very bullish in the fact that the demand is there. It's just figuring out how to build on top of it. And it's also fun because you start in the music business and then you can create into everything else. That's actually why I went into it. I read a book about someone that everyone on this panel knows well. And he said he went into music because it's the fastest way to get into everything else. And I'm having too much fun to not say bullish.
Right. I think it's quite fitting that Mr. Azoff has the first and last word today. So, Irving?
Obviously, very bullish. I think the biggest challenge, you know, having represented artists my entire career, is the lack of respect for intellectual property from a lot of the technology services. I think that's a common fight, and I think that it needs to change.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much. That's the end.